the best news.
Vice Chairman Brady.
The George Steinbrenner model. In Texas, we don't really talk about New York model being used, Tom. You should know that.
Sorry, Congressman.
Golly. First, I'd like to ask permission to submit for the record from Congressman John Campbell, a member of the committee, the statement by the California Healthcare Institute related to innovation job growth, if I may.
It will be submitted for the record.
Several of you have made the point that America is at risk at losing its leadership position in this very important industry. Dr. Sands, in your written testimony, said many countries in Western Europe are implementing biotech-friendly tax incentives, including lowering the corporate tax rate for innovative industries as a means to grow their 21st century economies. Tom Kowalski said over the last decade, America's leadership has begun to erode. We can adjust our tax policies and remain the leader or watch the industry move overseas. As we explore and move toward a lower tax rate with fewer exceptions, deductions, and complexity, knowing that is ultimately the goal, what tax changes can we make? What are the highest priorities in tax law to make today to ensure that private capital flows to the United States, that this is the best tax climate in order to make these investments, and then encourages the life science innovation to both grow here and remain here as well? Dr. Sands and Mr. Kowalski, I'll start with y'all.
Go ahead, you can start.
Well, we can take a look at state models. I think any tax credits that are allowed a company in the life science structure, particularly in the biotech arena, because many of these companies are so small, it goes to the bottom line. And you can see what the states are currently doing. Right now, and this is according to the Patel report that's been produced by Bio, 38 states are offering R&D tax credits. 20 states are offering tax credits to angel investors who invest in technology companies. 12 states are reported providing tax credits to individuals who invest in early-stage venture funds. One of the things that we've been advocating in Texas, and by the way, we do not have an R&D tax credit in the state of Texas. We're one of 12. And what we're advocating right now is a sales tax exemption on the purchase of equipment that would also be utilized in the R&D process as well as the manufacturing process. And to many of our companies, this is bottom line. It goes beyond that as well. It's an economic development driver. So our chambers, our economic development corporations are also advocating for this as well, because the money that is saved is then reinvested back into the R&D process and utilized in the manufacturing process.
Is that a higher priority than expanding, simplifying, and making the R&D tax credit permanent at the federal level?
I think making it permanent it should be a priority, because it leaves the industry guessing. And so, yes, I would say it should be a priority.
Well, it seems like today we're buying the R&D car on installment payments, but we're not allowed to drive it as far and fast as it can go by not making it permanent. Dr. Sands?
Well, I would echo what Tom just mentioned, but I'd say conceptually anything that would reinforce long-term thinking and long-term investment. I think one of the problems I see in this country, and even from the investor side, is very short-term thinking, and the R&D process in our industry is extremely long, probably one of the longest. The repatriation of capital for the large corporation, I know we're focused a lot on the small companies, but we do deals with big companies, and if their capital is locked overseas, there's less for us to do deals with on, and we've actually seen that. I find that whole concept just bizarre to me. I'm not a tax expert, but if that capital could come back to the major American corporations, I believe they would be another source of funding for R&D for the small companies.
Right. Thank you, Doctor. Mr. Heason?
I think when venture capitalist looks at things from the eyes of the entrepreneur, if the entrepreneur is happy, the venture capitalist is going to be happy. You have to look at and talk about the long-term dedication that entrepreneur has. Is that entrepreneur going to leave Amgen or Medtronic and go off and create his or own company? They're going to do that if they see a long-term tax potential, and that means a capital gains differential that gets that person up every day and says, not only am I going to try to help cure cancer, but I'm also going to see an economic benefit at the end of the day. And so making sure that there is continues to be a distinction between ordinary income and capital gains is critically important. And then also making sure that that capital gain, we believe after 7 years, you should not have to be paying capital gain even. If you're going to lock up your money and your time that long in trying to create a drug or a device that is going to benefit millions of Americans, that's something that should be, if you're risking your time and your money and venture capitalist money, at 7+ years, you should be looking at that very differently than a hedge fund person doing day trading.
I should have warned you in Washington, you're really not supposed to talk about the profit motive. It's really, a nervous thing around here. Dr. Tang?
Well, I certainly agree with the comments made by the fellow witnesses, and I go back to what Mark just mentioned. I think risk-taking has to be rewarded for the long term. That's very, very key. For startup companies, in terms of policy, net operating losses have to be monetized, and the states compete on that level, but foreign municipalities have put some very attractive offers on the table. So I think we need to acknowledge that entities outside the U.S. are making it very attractive for U.S. companies to do business there. How are we going to catch up? And the Life Science Jobs and Investment Act, I think, accounts for that, repatriating foreign profits back in the U.S. But the piece that is the most helpful about that potential legislation is that it will enable investment in research, infrastructure, and the startup companies that Mark and his members fund, as well as all the organizations that we have represented today. So you essentially renew the ecosystem in the U.S. for innovation by repatriating these profits.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Congressman Cummings.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.